All right, let's get right into it. We are going to break down one of the most incredible protest songs ever written, Bob Dylan's Hurricane. But this is so much more than just a song. It's an 8.5-minute epic, a masterclass in how you build a story to fight injustice using nothing but words, rhythm, and just raw moral outrage to take on an official story.
And boom, that's how the song starts. No warning, no gentle lead-in. Dylan just throws us right into the middle of the chaos, the very second the crime goes down. It's a brilliant move, really, because it makes us witnesses from the get-go. There's no distance. The story is moving at the speed of a bullet, and we're caught right in its path.
So we're at the scene of the crime, right in the immediate aftermath. And this is where the song starts doing its real work. It begins to pick apart the official story, showing us how those first critical moments are shaped entirely by who gets to tell it.
The first voice we hear is Patty Valentine's. She comes down from an upper hall, and her one line just establishes the pure horror of what happened. She sees the bodies, the blood. She's the voice of pure, unadulterated shock. She confirms the tragedy. But then, another character steps out of the shadows.
Next, Dylan introduces us to Alfred Bello. And you gotta pay attention to how he does this. Bello isn't just some guy who saw something. No. He was in the middle of committing his own crime. His very first words are a denial and an excuse. Dylan is basically waving a giant red flag telling us right away that this guy is an unreliable, self-serving narrator. He gets us to question the official story before it's even been told.
And this is just a genius storytelling move. Dylan cuts away from that bloody barroom to a totally different world and introduces our protagonist, Reuben "Hurricane" Carter. This jump cut does two incredibly powerful things at once. It establishes Carter as a champion, a famous, disciplined athlete, and maybe more importantly, it establishes his physical distance. He's far away. It creates this ironclad alibi in our minds from the very start.
Okay, so now we see how the story starts to build toward its central point. The song argues that this was never really about who pulled the trigger. It was about who the authorities wanted to be guilty. The whole focus shifts from finding the truth to just framing a target. And this is the brutal, unspoken logic of the world that Dylan is painting for us. He's laying out two totally different sets of rules. If you're a black man in Patterson, just being on the street is seen as a provocation. But if you're a white witness, well, your race is something the police can use to persuade you. The system isn't blind. It sees everything in black and white.
Now this is so important. When the cops pull Reuben Carter's car over, it's not a surprise. It's not random. Dylan makes it crystal clear that this is just routine harassment. It's a pattern, just like the time before and the time before that. And that context is everything, because it shows us that Reuben Carter was already a target long before any shots were ever fired that night.
And right here, this is the moment the whole official story should have just collapsed. They take Reuben to the hospital, to the only person who survived the shooting. And through his one dying eye, the guy gives the clearest testimony you could ask for. He ain't the guy. But in the story Dylan's telling us, that truth, it just gets thrown away. It doesn't fit the narrative the police are trying to write.
So what do you do when your star suspect is cleared by the only surviving eyewitness? Well, the authorities have a problem. And the next part of the song shows us exactly how they solve it. They don't look for new evidence. Oh no, they just manufacture it by putting the squeeze on their witnesses. I mean, look at this. Dylan lays out the whole process, like it's a step-by-step guide for corruption. It's so clinical. He shows us that a frame-up isn't some stroke of evil genius. It's just a dirty procedural checklist. You find Bello's partner, you leverage another crime he committed, you appeal to his race, and then you just squeeze until he tells you what you want to hear.
And the song doesn't just imply they pressured him. It puts the words right in the cops' mouths. This isn't subtext. It's a threat wrapped up in a friendly suggestion. Be a nice fellow. It's just a chilling look at how power can manipulate weakness to get what it wants.
And there it is. Dylan just cuts through all the noise. The goal was never to solve the murders at the Lafayette Barn Grill. The goal, from the very beginning, was to convict Reuben Carter. The song just says it, plain and simple, turning this whole investigation into a conspiracy with one single, predetermined outcome.
So, with their fabricated testimony in hand, the story moves to its inevitable climax, the courtroom. But Dylan doesn't present this as a hall of justice. Not at all. He presents it as a theater of the absurd, a place he calls a pig circus, completely stripping it of any real authority.
This line is basically the thesis statement for this whole section of the song. It says it all, doesn't it?
The outcome was already decided. The imagery of marked cards and a pig circus is just this powerful act of defiance, refusing to legitimize a process the song says was rotten to the core.
And this slide just breaks down that farce perfectly. Dylan is basically cross-examining the state's entire case. The official story says, credible testimony, but Dylan says, nope, they were drunkards from the slums. The defendant is smeared with racist and political labels. The so-called impartial jury, the all-white jury agreed. And the irrefutable proof? They couldn't even produce the murder weapon.
So in the end, the whole conviction, this entire life sentence, came down to the words of two men that the song has already shown us were unreliable and had been pressured. Bello and Bradley, as the song says, both baldly lied. And maybe just as damning, the supposed watchdog of the system, the press, they didn't question it, they just went along for the ride, becoming part of the problem.
In the final verses, the song's perspective shifts in a really interesting way. Dylan, the storyteller, kind of steps out from behind the curtain to deliver his own verdict, not just on the case, but on the entire country that let it happen.
Wow, this is such a powerful moment. The narrator breaks the fourth wall. It's not just Reuben Carter's story anymore. Suddenly, it's our story. Dylan puts himself in it, and by doing that, he puts all of us in it, sharing in the shame of a system where justice isn't a sacred principle, but just a game to be won or lost.
And the song lands on this final, unforgettable image. It's a stark contrast. The real criminals, the ones in their coats and their ties who engineered this whole thing, they're free to drink martinis. Meanwhile, the innocent man, Reuben Carter, is trapped. He sits like Buddha in a 10-foot cell, an innocent man in a living hell.
But the song doesn't end with despair. It actually ends with a demand. This isn't just some sad story from the past. It's an injustice that is still happening. The entire narrative that Dylan has spent 8 minutes building ends with a call to action. It turns a history lesson into this urgent, unfinished plea for justice.
And really, that's the question the song leaves us with. It's a story about one man, sure, but it's also about the incredible power of storytelling itself. When the official systems fail so completely that a folk singer has to lay out the entire case for innocence verse by verse, it forces us to ask what justice really is and what it costs to actually find it.